Welcome to Trichy Truths, the podcast where we deep dive into the real underlying causes of trichotillomania. I'm Laura, a clinical nutritionist and founder of Trichy Nutrition, and I'm here to help you uncover the hidden connections between your body, mind, and the hair pulling cycle. In each episode, we're going to explore the root causes for your hair pulling behaviours, from nutrient deficiencies and gut health imbalances to stress, hormones, and a lot more, because trick is never just a habit, there's always a bigger story behind it. If you're ready for insights, strategies, and support that go beyond surface level solutions, you're in the right place. Let's get started. In today's episode, I want to talk about food triggers. Now, this is one of the very first things that I discovered on my own trick recovery journey. So it seemed fitting to address this in episode 3 of the Trichy Truths podcast. So let's go back. I was in my mid-30s and I began studying for my health science degree. I was majoring in nutrition and dietetic medicine. I was learning lots about nutrition and different foods and how these foods can cause different symptoms in our bodies. I started noticing how certain foods were actually making me feel, and then I also started noticing how some of these foods were causing an exacerbation of my pulling urges. So you might be listening to this and you might be nodding your head and saying, yep, I've definitely got a list of foods that you know that can cause these issues too. Or you may be listening and think, nope, not me. Food's got nothing to do with it. I'm guessing because you're listening that you have noticed some foods that are causing some issues for you. I will say in my clinical practice, I do see both ends of that stick. So I'll often see people that have nothing to do with food, they haven't noticed anything, and then I'll have others that have a whole list of foods that they're like, yep, often they're stimulant foods like sugar, and I know a lot of people that I talk to with trick will often say that sugar is one of those foods that can really cause that increase in pulling urges. But let's dive a little bit deeper here. So let's talk about first, like, what is a trigger? So triggers are what come before thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and can lead to a response or change in emotion and behavior. These triggers could include anything such as stress, past trauma, noise, stuff like that. But today we're specifically going to be looking at foods. So food triggers that are causing your hair pulling urges, and could also be causing other symptoms as well. So we don't want to just concentrate on hair pulling. We want to look at all of the symptoms in the body, and that's something that I really promote inside of my Trichy Nutrition, is to constantly be observing all of your symptoms, not just the hair pulling. So let's talk first about what I mean by other symptoms. Often people go, what do you mean other symptoms? I'm not sure if I've got any. So a symptom is a physical or mental feature which is regarded as indicating a condition of disease, particularly such a feature that is apparent to the patient. So these symptoms give us key information about what is really going on in the body. Often these symptoms can tell us about imbalances and deficiencies, and then can lead us to greater understanding of the underlying causes for your hair pulling. I'm always talking about the different symptoms and to make sure that we're observing these symptoms. So you've got your obvious ones, such as your digestive symptoms. That's an obvious one from a clinical nutritionist. So you might be looking at things like nausea or bloating or diarrhea or constipation. So I often do see a few digestive symptoms in a lot of my clients, but I also have many clients that have no digestive symptoms at all. So other symptoms we can get are like headaches or migraines. We might feel tired, like really low energy. Definitely sleep disturbances is another one that I often see. Definitely skin issues. I get a lot of skin issues with a lot of clients as well. Obviously, we've got your body focused repetitive behaviors. So it might not be just hair pulling. It could be hair twirling, nail biting, biting inside of the cheek or mouth, and then we've also got skin picking. Other symptoms include things like your respiratory stuff, so like your allergies or your hay fever, You might get colds and flus quite often. We can also look at reproductive issues, so heavy periods, irregular periods, blood clots, and then you've also got your nervous system symptoms as well. So think your low mood, depression, anxiety, mood swings, irritability, and definitely angry outbursts, which I see a lot too. So just that anger and quick to temper. So these are all symptoms that we want to look at, okay? And a lot of these can be brought back to these food triggers. You might not realize it, but once you start observing and start looking at it, you may notice that these are a big part of it. So often we do dismiss these symptoms. I'll put in air quotes. We might look at these symptoms as normal, but I'm here to tell you they are certainly not normal, and they really are a sign from your body. They are really trying to tell you something. So these symptoms can tell you about the food triggers and those food reactions, but they can also tell you about deficiencies and imbalances, which we will definitely be covering in upcoming podcasts. So before I get started talking a little bit more specific on some different foods and food triggers, let's talk about what we can do to identify and manage these food triggers. So how do we start connecting these dots for you? I like to, inside of these podcasts, I really want to give some practical steps for you. So what I encourage you to do, and I do this for my clients as well, is to complete a food symptoms diary. So it's not as complicated as it sounds. It's literally, you can do it in a fancy app if you want, or you can just get a simple piece of paper, put it on your kitchen bench, or put it in your bag, and just every time you're consuming any foods or drinks, you're going to write it down, and then you're also going to write down any other symptoms. So out of that list of symptoms, you could easily go to Google or ChatGPT and write down all those list of symptoms. Just write down a list of symptoms, or if you were listening to those before, write them all down and then just note them when you notice them in your body. So I recommend doing it for at least 7 days. If you can't do 7 days, I know 7 days sounds like a long time sometimes these days, you could just do it for like 2 or 3 days. But it doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be done. And honestly, you'll be surprised what you can observe with all this time. So something else to note here is to notice how long it takes for it to happen. So a lot of people will ask me, okay, so I ate this food and I noticed this half an hour later, or I noticed it the next day. Like, has it got to do with that? So it's about trying to find patterns in that diary. So you might have something and you feel ill straight away, or you can notice it straight away, so you know that that's there. Sometimes it might not be till the next day. So just as an example, I know for some people that alcohol might make you feel really good at the time and there's no pulling and whatever, but then the next 24 to 48 hours there's that increase in pulling. Okay, so that might be something that you notice. I also know with MSG, so monosodium glutamate, you might notice not so much in that straight after, some people do, but you might notice more sleep disturbances that evening, and then it might take you a little while. You may have that increased anxiety for the next day or two again while that MSG leaves your body. So definitely keeping a food diary, food symptom diary. So we want to write down all the food and then all the symptoms. So now let's go through some of the food triggers that you need to look for, okay? So obviously it usually includes a lot of the stimulant foods when it comes to tricks. So think your white refined sugars, carbohydrates, caffeine, chocolate, alcohol, which I've mentioned already, and then your artificial sweeteners. So, but something that I also want to mention in this podcast is looking at those more obscure foods. So looking at things that you might not have thought would have anything to do with it, but maybe one of those highly reactive foods for you. So some of the ones that come to mind are tomatoes. So I've had quite a few clients that have noticed that increase in pulling after tomatoes. It is a sulfur food. It also has glutamate in it, so monosodium glutamate. Tomatoes are naturally occurring glutamate food, and often if you've got some sort of glutamate dysregulation, it may increase that need to pull. Okay, so tomatoes are one of the foods I hear about a bit. Corn is another one. I think it's got more to do with the way that they're actually growing the corn, not so much the corn itself. So obviously there's a lot of glyphosate on the corn, so that could be part of it as well. So now, I also want to talk about, like, just on those ingredients. So if you want to know more about those ingredients, I do have a food ingredients cheat sheet that you can download. I will put it in the show notes to make sure that you can download that. That will really help you with your food symptom diary to look at some other foods. So I haven't listed them all here today, but it's definitely worthwhile downloading that. Now, I also want to touch on in this podcast is talk about why. Like, why is this occurring? Why are we reacting to these foods? So it comes down to gut health. Of course, that's what I was going to say. So your gut is inflamed. So it's inflamed from years of what we call the SAD diet, which is the standard American diet, but that easily fits with the standard Australian diet too. So it's a highly processed, highly inflammatory. These diets are just not what our guts were made for. So our guts are completely out of balance due to a lot of, imbalance from the inflammatory foods. We've got underlying infections. I see a lot of bacterial and parasitic infections. We're exposed to different chemicals, antibiotics, and like a heap of other environmental pollutants. So it's not surprising that our guts are screaming out for help. So the gut is inflamed, and it's not in a good shape. So, and what we call it leaky gut. You might have heard that term before. So this just means the epithelial lining of the gut, which is like a single layer of cells that what that lining does, it helps you absorb nutrients, and it's a protective layer against pathogens. And what it is, that the gut's inflamed, and when it's inflamed, we end up with, instead of this nice little holes that like to let nutrients in and out of the bloodstream, we end up with these really big holes in the gut, and this allows like your toxins and those other substances to enter the bloodstream, and it enters at a fast rate, and that's when we get these really big reactive symptoms. Okay, so the good news though, don't want it to be all bad, is that when we remove these reactive foods, our gut actually has a chance to heal, and then we can find that balance again. So we can often reintroduce some of these foods later on down the track. Everybody's different, and everybody's gut and body responds differently. So I just recommend that we eliminate some of these reactive foods just for a little while, especially whilst we're going through this trick recovery process. So I also want to mention is this doesn't mean you have to go without. I know a lot of people, and if you're a parent listening as well, that you think, oh, I can't do without MSG, we can't do without the preservatives, we can't do without this. I'm here to say that you can do it. I do it for my own children. We just have to find healthier alternatives to these foods, or find different ways around the symptoms. So I'll give you just an example, is something like rice crackers at the supermarket. You can either go on the exact same shelf, there'll be one rice cracker packet that has 10 ingredients, which can sometimes include that MSG, the monosodium glutamate that I was just mentioning before, and then you'll have another packet sitting next to it that has 3 ingredients. Now, which would you rather put into your body? So obviously it's still a processed food, but we want to pick the healthier alternatives and get less of these ingredients into our body. This will allow the body to start healing. So another way we can also look at it is when we're going through these observations during that food symptom diary, is to look at how your body responds. So I'll give you an example, is coffee. So I know, for instance, for me, I'm a very big coffee drinker. There will definitely be a upcoming podcast about coffee, is that when I have coffee, that caffeine, if I have it on an empty stomach, the caffeine will go straight to my bloodstream. There's no barrier there. There's nothing there. I might get a higher reaction. So heart palpitations, I might feel a little bit anxious, a little bit jittery. Whereas if I have it with food, that will come down. So I always often say to people to see how you react to coffee. Some people can really handle coffee, some people can't. Some people do have to turn to decaf. It is very sad, but I like to find a way where I can still have my caffeine and not have the anxiety. So I look at having it with food. My other thing is I spread it out. So I make sure that I don't have 1 cup and then an hour or 2 later have another cup. So, and then I also know my maximum, what my body can handle, where it doesn't disrupt my sleep. It doesn't make me feel jittery. So I know that 2 cups of coffee in a day is enough for me. So that's what I stick to. I have 1 with my breakfast and I have 1 after I've had my lunch. And that's what works for me. It doesn't disrupt my sleep. It doesn't make me feel anxious. I get to still have some caffeine. I love coffee. It's one of my favorite smells in the entire world. But yeah, you can definitely still work out ways that you can still have these things. And it's the same with those healthy alternatives at the supermarket. You can still have rice cracker. You can still have, there's chips on I know in some countries they might call them crisps, but sometimes, I'm talking about like your salt and vinegar chips, or there's certain brands that don't have that bunch of ingredients or don't have the MSG. So it's just it's just a little bit of extra work to start with and finding these healthier alternatives. And then it'll be a lot easier once you know what they are. It's easy to go and grab. It's easy for me to go to the supermarket now and pick those better alternatives. So definitely I recommend downloading that food ingredient so that you can become a little bit of a super sleuth when it comes to the supermarket. So definitely grab that link. If you do have any questions about today's episode, please send me a message via our Trichy Nutrition socials, or you can send me an email, which is laura@trichynutrition.com.au. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Trichy Truths. I hope it gave you some clarity and a deeper understanding of the root causes behind trichotillomania. If you'd like to keep learning, you can find me on all of your favourite social media places: Facebook, Instagram and TikTok. Here I share tips, client wins and resources every week. For video content and deeper dives, head over to my Trichy Nutrition YouTube channel. And if you're ready for more personalised support, you can book in for one-on-one sessions or a treatment package with me. Here we will work together to uncover your root causes and build a plan tailored just for you. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and I'll see you next time.